Hello and welcome to episode 135 of PubShorts. My name is Dr. KK and we are calling this the overload, and the reason as to why we are doing it will be explained by this gentleman who calls himself Tony O'Rourke.
Hi everyone. Welcome to PubShorts. I hope you like our stories relating to the world of research integrity. This particular episode is called The Overload, as KK rightly points out, which comes after the song by the band Yard Act from 2022. The song's sense of systems buckling under pressure fits really this week's stories very well. AI detection hitting limits, duplicated databases, and cozy editorial networks and integrity mechanisms struggling to keep up with scale.
Right. So, Tony, if somebody is listening in for the first time, where can they find all the episodes?
They can go to our YouTube channel and just search for Inago PubShorts, and you'll see all previous 134 episodes. I used to say that it'd take you a couple of days, but it'd take you a couple of weeks now to watch all these episodes.
But it's
they're all over. I'm sure some leave comments and please leave suggestions for future topics.
right, but they are all worth watching. That's a big.
Oh, they're all great.
Yeah.
Oh, and don't forget to press that like button.
Right. Okay, so I'm ready to move on to the first story. Tony, I might have sent you truncated notes, but I'll anyway read through it. So the first story that we're covering is titled "Detecting AI Writing in the Age of Large Language Models. How far can tech go?" So, Tony, we are aware of it, right? AI content detection, especially AI writing, AI generated content detection, is a burning sort of an issue throughout. I mean, wherever you look at it. But there are challenges in terms of how accurate it is, and we have internally have had conversations about it. So this article talks about it, and the detectors, it explains as to how these detectors work by identifying statistical patterns in text, such as the complexity or the perplexity of the language and the context in which it's coming from. However, the technology faces significant challenges, including a rapid advancement of LLMs, which are becoming better at mimicking human writing patterns. So, in the sense, if you wanted to create, let's say, an essay, okay, using, let's say, ChatGPT, you can tell ChatGPT to write like a human, and that in itself will sort of fix the issue. So false positives are particularly problematic, potentially leading to unfair accusations against genuine writers. So the article overall suggests a shift away from purely punitive detection towards evaluating the writing process itself, which, if you remember, we have something that helps in this process. It's called DocuMark, and I'm sure that, Tony, you would talk about it. Encouraging institutions to adapt and modify their assessment method. So it advocates for transparency and education on responsible AI tool usage rather than outright ban, which I completely agree with. And ultimately, the future of AI detection may lie in coexistence and adaptation, with tools serving as risk flags rather than definitive judgments. I thought I was nodding along when I read this article, and as I mentioned, something that a product that we have called DocuMark deals with the exact same problem. So, Tony, what are your thoughts, and can you also explain what DocuMark is and how people can know more about it?
So DocuMark is an AI detection tool that we've developed, and what it allows the research institution to do is to monitor how content is being created, whether it's an essay, a dissertation, a thesis, whatever. It tells you, how much content has been just cut and paste from another source, how much has been directly plagiarized, how much content has been generated by hand, by the human or the person creating that content, and also how much of the content has been generated by AI. So, we can't. The reality is people are going to use AI, and institutions need to set rules about what sort of levels are acceptable. The same way they're setting rules about, how much plagiarism is permissible in any given content. This will be the same with AI.
Right.
I think the big concern, just stepping aside from DocuMark for a second, is the point you make about the effect it's having on legitimate authors, legitimate authors writing good content, and the assessor believing, well, actually, look, hang on, this is AI content. This isn't you having to prove this. I had a conversation with a member of my family recently, and one of his colleagues, he works in teaching, was accused of using AI when writing a piece of assessment because the assessor said, "No, this is too well written. This isn't you. This isn't your style. This is far too well written."
Okay.
And the answer was he did write it. He just spent a long time writing it. He didn't use AI. So it's protecting the content creator as much as it is the assessor.
Right. And where can people find more about DocuMark?
I'll just Google Inargo DocuMark, and it'll take you straight to the DocuMark page on
All
our
right.
website.
All right. Thank you, Tony. That was useful. And moving on to the next story, we are well within the realm of research integrity and related issues. So I'm moving to the screen share once more. So this one came in I don't even know if I can pronounce it. It's a long report, but I'll give Tony you a shot in pronouncing it. So I'm going to the top of it. So this is what we're looking at. Do you can
Okay,
you?
this is the Italian Institute of Physics,
Uh huh.
Fisica E,
Uh
the
huh.
journal Fisica E, and this is the new Sagittarius. I think it's Saggiatore. Il nuovo Saggiatore Bollettino, the bulletin of the Italian Society of Physics.
All right.
Saggiatore. Yeah, I think it's Sagittarius.
So
I'm
this
not,
is
I'll have to check. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, while you look it up, I'll also explain that that does have an English article, and that's what we're covering. Starts at page number 35, and this is thanks to Helen King's Pub Tech Radar that I've stumbled on it. So this is written by Kim Eggleton, IOP Publishing, London, UK. I think you know Kim, I suppose, Tony. You probably have a
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
yes. So, well, she worked for a company I spent a long time at, and yes, we know Kim.
Right. So the argument that Kim makes here, the core argument is simple: research integrity can no longer be handled by publisher, and trust in scholarly communication depends on honesty, transparency, and shared accountability. Industrialized misconduct has shifted integrity risks from isolated cases to systemic ones. So paper mills, she mentions that paper mills are no longer fringe factors, and I thought I hadn't thought of it like that because they operate at scale and adapt quickly. So that means that they are not fringe concerns anymore, and that's the reason why a lot of people, a lot of publishers want paper mill detectors. And AI has also made misconduct creation cheaper, more scalable, faster, and it becomes more hard to detect the overall thing there. So the data on AI assisted writing and peer review shows adaptation is already widespread, and
Yeah.
IOP's shift from mandatory AI disclosure to responsibility based checks reflect the reality. And I think that's another thing. I mean, it sort of it ties the core argument from the previous article we covered
And
as
this
well.
we said 6 months ago about talk about predictions, and one of the things I said at the time was that the AI disclosure wasn't going to be enough. The publishers were going to ask authors to be much more open about
Right.
how AI is being used, and this is a really good example.
Right. The issue of AI use or misuse is also talked about. And so the Kim makes a point that the real issue is not AI use, but instead its accuracy, accountability, and oversight. And retractions are rising sharply, so that's something we need to consider. She also covered citation manipulation, which is a metric related and publish or perish related problem as well. So eventually, she sort of sums it up. Integrity is positioned at a community effort involving researchers, institutions, funders, reviewers, and publishers. And society publishers are cast as conveners, not as just gatekeepers. And transparency standards set by organizations like COPE, TOP, and CREC are treated as infrastructure and not as add-ons. So she probably recommends that, and the STM Integrity Hub is provided as an example. And she finally says there's a strong push to destigmatize corrections across the research community, and the conclusion reinforces that the integrity survives only through shared responsibility among all the stakeholders. So it's a wonderful read if you have been thinking about research integrity and how things are. Any thoughts on the points that I listed,
Yeah,
Tony? Yeah.
yeah. Just very quickly. First of all, I made a mistake. Saggiatore doesn't mean a Sagittarius. I stupidly assumed
Uh,
it means assessor or assayer,
right.
the new assessor. That's what you use when you're testing materials, for example. Um, I think what this highlights is the fact that if I go back even 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
having it was unusual, it was rare to see things like errata appearing in
Right.
journals and
Right.
corrigendum appearing in journals. It was seen as almost like a stigma
Mm-hmm.
to have that. And I think what we're seeing now is that look, we have to accept that there, there's going to be an element of errata in everything potentially that's being published, and we have to identify those papers quickly and and act quickly.
Mm-hmm.
In ensuring that it doesn't affect how future literature is being evaluated.
Right.
So no, I just think honesty is absolutely the best policy here. Clearly, it has issues in terms of trust, which ultimately it's the role of the publisher and the author to help eradicate.
Right. And I think the thing that I took away most from, which I think I've been advocating along with you on PubShots, is that the industry needs to band together in terms of communications and infrastructure sharing
Yeah,
and better
yeah.
data sharing and everything. And that's the only way that, I mean, the STM Integrity Hub works because of publisher data transfer. So they
Well,
have that. Yeah.
Crossref started as
Yeah.
an industry collaboration.
Right. All right. Moving on to the next one. It's titled The Duplicates That Haunt crystallography databases. So this is an article from Chemical and Engineering News, which discusses the issue of duplicate crystal structures appearing in scientific databases. So researchers have called for the retraction of two recent studies published in Nature that used AI to identify new crystal structures. So the critics claim that many of the structures presented as novel in these studies are actually duplicates to existing ones. The problem highlights the concerns about data curation practices in crystallography databases, as well as the validity of claims of scientific novelty. And a new method for detecting duplicates developed by Vitaly Kurlin and his colleagues is being used to identify these issues across various databases. So while some databases are quietly removing the duplicates, others argue that duplicates may still hold scientific value or represent valid observations under different conditions. So this is a different slice in terms of data integrity. We have not talked about it as much. But just like if let's say if you question the sort of veracity of a article itself, you need to question the veracity of data, especially that comes
Absolutely.
through artificial intelligence. So and the surprising thing is that Google was part of the research, and hence I would have expected more quality control. But this again highlights the fact that at any place in the chain of information transfer in the scholarly publishing ecosystem, there could be integrity issues, and you need, in my opinion, AI tools at least, or some things, tools that help the humans find and weed out and communicate these integrity issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also, the responsibility of the LLMs to be able to then somehow adjust their databases, their content to reflect any duplications or any errors like this.
That's
That's
that. Yeah.
there is a simple expression: rubbish in, rubbish out.
Right, right. In fact, I think Tony, you're referring to the big sort of hot topic in the last couple of weeks, whether you can retract a paper when it's already in an
Yeah,
LLM.
yeah. Well,
So
that's something else. Yeah.
yeah, so we'll probably talk about it in another episode. So I'm moving on to the next story. This is from Retraction Watch. It's titled Elite Cohort of Business School Scholars and Editors Scratch Each Other's Tags. So study finds. Interesting headline. So the study found that academics who frequently publish in the top business journals often have prior working relationships with the editors handling their papers. So again, which I think, I mean, it is probably common across, but in this case, I think there's a even stronger tendency for this. So the two authors initially claimed to study superstar scholars, but noticed pattern among editor-author connections, and their analysis focused on approximately 1,600 articles from two unnamed elite business journals and identified 54 academics who published at least 10 articles each. It's a very sort of correlative thing, this. So this elite cohort accounted for nearly half of all published articles, but only 2.4% of all the authors. Now that's a significant sort of I guess correlating factor. The study also noted that 90% of these frequent authors earned their PhDs from North American institutions, and nearly 95% were men, which is we have noted that in several studies, I suppose, Tony. The preponderance of men, especially from north, let's say the northern hemisphere. A significant finding was that at least half of the author editor pairs had a potential conflict of interest, with about 40% having accepted each other's papers. And the authors of this article suggest these editorial conflicts of interest are pervasive and may be influenced by academic incentives like bonuses and promotions for publishing in the top journals. And finally, they also comment that this could be the tip of the iceberg, and there could be a far deeper problem in this space in terms of conflict of interest. So you've been, I say this, and you have elicited a chuckle out of you. You've been around the block for quite a lot of time. So what do you think of this article and its let's say correlative accusations, I would say?
Um, Listen, these research communities, although there may be millions of researchers, some of these micro communities are very small.
Right.
And everybody knows each other. I mean, or it's only at a senior level. When a new name comes in, that's when it's obviously exciting and interesting.
Right.
And that's it. It's the responsibility of the publisher to root out any conflicts of interest. I know we work very closely with several publishers around things like peer review services, for example,
Mm-hmm.
helping support their peer review activity. And their criteria are really, really strict in terms of, if you know this person, if you actually worked with this person, if you have a personal relationship with this person, you cannot be a peer reviewer. So if those journals are not, if those business journals, for example, that are being we're talking about here, haven't got their similar that sort of rigor in place, it causes a problem and there will be bias.
Right. Is there any sort of systemic solution that you have in avoiding? I mean, for example, I mean, I think COPE has created guidelines for conflict of interest in the context of editors. Maybe more enforcement along those lines.
There has to be more enforcement and there has to be greater rigor. It's really down to publishers to use it's kind of AI tools to provide sort of the author ambiguation and reviewer disambiguation to help them to identify the right reviews. Listen, I feel their pain because finding reviewers today is not an easy process.
Right.
And if you've got a willing reviewer who may happen to know someone else, then it's kind of it's tempting, but still has to be resisted.
Right. All right, moving on to the last main story, if I'm not mistaken. It is related to AI generated commentaries. So, Tony, this I think you might have read this. AI generated commentaries and letters to those to the editor of peer-reviewed publications, editors and authors beware. So, so far, Tony, we've generally been talking about AI generated content in the context of an actual research paper. So, this is first of two stories I think we are covering in PubShorts, where we have other article types, for example, commentaries, which are AI generated. And I, at least until I read this, I hadn't thought of it. So this letter focused on methodological issues that were either misrepresented or already addressed in the paper, the AI generated letter, that is. And the letter authors had an astonishing publication record of over 780 commentaries and letters in the last 2 years, with no original empirical research conducted themselves. And many of these commentaries were on diverse medical specialties, suggesting a broad, almost unfocused approach. And a significant portion of their commentaries, approximately 16%, mentioned artificial intelligence, particularly after ChatGPT became publicly accessible. And this suggests AI is being used to generate critiques of research, contributing to a flood of questionable submissions. So institutional pressures are obviously at play, and AI may also help non-native speakers. So these are some of the things that we might consider. The article suggests that editors of journals are the first line of defense against such misuse, and vigilance must also extend to commentaries and letters, which, again, this is what I did not think of, but it seems so obvious that this is a very easy way to sort of game the system. So AI generated commentaries can waste authors' time and pollute the scientific disclosure, obviously, because the content is, let's say, relatively superficial. And the authors of this article propose 3 strategies: raising awareness, which is what we are doing by discussing this in PubShorts, documenting commentary writers' publication histories, as well as using AI detection tools. Interesting. This is the first time, as I said, I'm fascinated to listen to what you have to say about this type of misconduct.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have a great deal to say apart from the fact that, are they? I was just wondering whether these papers are being retracted. Are they being allowed to continue? Do they still go feed them into the literature?
Yeah, I haven't checked this, but maybe I can quickly check this using maybe a link, because it's my get FTR is not showing anything. I think it's full text access. You can see this.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
So those papers are still there.
yeah.
Just because they've used an AI content summarizer doesn't mean to say it's wrong.
Right.
It's just about disclosure again, honestly, in terms of how that content's been created. Surely, and that's why we have tools like DocuMark and why we're pushing things like responsible AI movement. So,
but in this case, Tony, the topic is not whether AI has been used. It's basically that AI generated commentaries are very easy to create using public AI tools, and you can sort of make it into a paper mill kind of a situation where you churn out these commentaries, and you don't need original articles, because anybody, even I, can write to a journal saying that, okay, this is what I think about it, and when you have it, your name comes in all sorts of like 780.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's gaming the system. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole short community. What used to be used to be called letters,
right?
Rapid communications commentaries. It's an industry in itself. There are hundreds of thousands of these commentaries and letters appearing across the literature every year.
Yeah, so I still do not know if there is a link to any of these commentaries, so I we won't be able to. So all the references that are there for this particular commentary, which is about the AI generated commentaries, seem to be non-retracted, but I don't think they are from the same author. So
Yeah,
let's
maybe we can look into this in more detail and
yeah,
come back here in a
right.
future episode.
All right, quick hits time. The first one is called Safeguarding Scientific Integrity in Fragile Democracies. It's from the International Science Council. So, the author is a teaching professor at Georgetown University and a member of the ISC's Committee for Freedom and Responsibility in Science. And he reflects on how scientific integrity is crucial for democratic resilience, especially in fragile democracies. And he uses Nicaragua's experience as a case study. And he mentioned that in fragile democracies, defending science's autonomy and ethics is key to maintaining public trust and evidence based governance. So, this is also in the context of Nicaragua government's sort of, I guess, policies related to the COVID-19 pandemic, in where they downplayed the COVID-19 pandemic itself and ignored guidelines, etc. So, interesting that we see a similar sort of a situation happening in the US, and obviously, US is considered the pillar of democracy for the rest of the world, free world, I guess. So, what do you think? I mean, do you think research integrity in the context of a governmental sort of, I guess, policy is important for maintaining democracies?
Um,
Loaded question.
it's a discussion that's going to take longer than this episode to sort of
Mhm.
conclude. I think it's government responsibilities to ensure that the truth is being
Mhm.
the real truth, not some fabricated truth, that's being disseminated,
Mhm.
and that there should be policies in place that will reward good research and will punish bad actors.
Right.
And if governments can have measures in place to help that, then I think that can only help the process.
All right. Next, quick hit time. Another one from Retraction Watch. This title: Dana Farber settles suit alleging what image manipulation for approximately 15 million US dollars. So,
Wow.
Retraction Watch reported that the settlement has happened, and it's related to allegations of image manipulation and data misrepresentation in grant applications to the NIH. The lawsuit was filed under False Claims Act by a sleuth, Sholto David, and I think he won a lot of money for it as well. So Dana Farber admitted that researchers misrepresented or duplicated images and data, and so this is another example of this is how image manipulation as a sort of an issue came to the fore, at least in my life, 2 years ago approximately, when we heard a lot about the manipulated images in, I think, the Alzheimer's studies that came out from Dana Farber. So in terms of image manipulation detection, Tony, we've come about 2 years, 2.5 years later. What do you think? Where are we? And is the industry more at threat because of the rise of such powerful image models that can do whatever you ask them to do?
There were some terrifically powerful tools out there, like that will help with image manipulation. I'm thinking of image twin
Mm.
proofing, very, very good tools that will help you to identify.
Yeah.
But even they, possibly image manipulation, but even they accept that it's a moving wheel. That they can make 20 improvements in one day, and there'll be 25 new images which they haven't actually picked up on the next. So it's I am concerned. I think the situation is only getting worse, and AI is being used more and more to
Right.
generate images, and these tools are finding not struggling, but they're still finding certainly an increasing challenge to keep up.
And when you talk to publishers, do they consider image manipulation as one of the things for which they need, let's say, solutions?
Yeah, absolutely, and particularly in areas like the life sciences and medical sciences, there have to be solutions in place because it's all about trust. If you're looking at a journal article, if you're looking at a piece of content,
Mhm.
you want to be able to trust not just the content but the image that's been represented. So there has to be complete honesty and integrity in that
Right.
content. And publishers need to find tools, and there are tools out there that will help identify manipulation.
Right.
They cost money, but they are absolutely essential.
Right, right. Tony, I don't know if you have been, you're a fan of the 28 Days Later series. There's a new movie out, but we have an article, a quick hit from the sort of similar world. So this is called "Systemic Reforms Need to Kill Zombie Retracted Papers," and I thought this looked like a scene from The Walking Dead. So this discusses a study suggesting that publishers and editors play a crucial role in maintaining the integrity of the scholarly record, and the study calls for systemic reforms to deal with zombie retracted papers. I think this is also sort of alluding to what we discussed in terms of LLM retractions, which are papers that have been retracted but continue to be read and cited, which is a problem. And we have talked
Yeah.
so many times about communication downstream. I recently was made aware of Crossmark, which is a cross-ref indicator to sort of errors and errata and expressions of concern. But anyway, so it has not been implemented properly. I think at least the industry has not adopted it, and so these retractions, Tony, often happen too late, causing significant damage before they are addressed. And publishers are urged to implement proactive strategies and reforms to quickly address these papers. So, which is what I think you and I keep on talking about. But happy that at least things like Get FTR provide us with some rich at least visual UI to sort of understand if a paper has been retracted or has an expression of concern. Where do you stand on this topic?
I stand very firmly on the topic that we touched on this earlier on. I am deeply concerned about the impact
Mm-hmm.
retracted papers is having on the literature. Not just recently, but how long,
Right.
how many papers have been published in the last 50, 100 years in retrospect should have been retracted. And I think it's a real concern. You think about how the impact of a citation. If a paper is published,
Mm-hmm.
that paper isn't immediately cited. It can be cited over weeks or months or years.
Right.
And even though something can be removed from the literature after a year, 2 years, what's happening in that period of time with the most active readership, the most active consumption of that content when it hasn't been retracted?
Right.
It's feeding into the literature, it's feeding into the knowledge base, and effectively polluting the knowledge base. No, it's a real issue, and I think it's one that I know publishers are taking very seriously, is what they can do to clean up their content.
Right. Right. Well, we'll continue to talk about it, and I think things like Crossref and obviously things like Get FTR provide us, at least let's say the society, with indicators, and we should probably use it more often. And that is not a segue, but still I consider as a segue. But because this is the last quick hit that we have, this is from Retraction Watch again, the U.S. Office of Research Integrity, which is abbreviated as ORI, has released just two misconduct findings this year, which is very low. This is the lowest number of findings since at least 2006, and ORI usually releases about 10 findings a year, and it is part, obviously, the ORI is part of the Department of Health and Human Services and oversees research integrity for agencies like the NIH and the CDC. So we're also made aware of the leadership churn at the ORI with 5 directors in the last 20 years. So this is probably a correlatory finding, but at the same time, we are aware of what's happening in the US in terms of research integrity and in terms of funding, and this is obviously a concern. And I think you would agree with me on that.
I would, absolutely, no question.
All right, so that brings us to the end of. Oh wait, I didn't share the. Okay, but I should have switched to this. This is the article that I was showing you when I talked about the ORI releasing just 2 findings. So anyway, I'll switch to the big video, and we will say that this is the end of the episode, episode 135, which is called the Overload. And Tony, you just mentioned at the top of the episode that we have 134 episodes, and I'm sure that it is the overload that we didn't imply here. But at the same time,
we're guilty of this crime.
we are indeed guilty. But anyway, so I would still request for people who do not mind the overload, how they can find all the 134 episodes.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of this episode, just go over to the Inago playlist on YouTube and search for PubShorts, and then please press that like button, share some comments, and share with your colleagues. Hopefully, you find stories relating to what the world press is saying, the world academic press is saying about research integrity to be of use.
Right. What we won't consider as overload, you and me, Tony, would be music, especially live music. So, have you had any live music in your life lately?
I have, yeah. I went to a gig last night alone. I went to a jazz gig. The Peter Roth's Trio. You ever heard of a drummer called Bill Bruford?
No, but I think you mentioned the guitar player in this many times.
Peter it was fantastic. It was a really small little gig. Bill Bruford was the reason I went. Bill
Hmm.
Bruford used to be the drummer of a rock band called Yes many years ago,
I see.
and he was also in a band called King Crimson. So it was
Yeah,
wonderful to
I know
see him
King Crimson.
and his
Yes, yeah.
skill. And he retired. He retired 15 years ago, and he came out of retirement, I think. And this was the band that's taken him out of retirement. It's wonderful to see him play so close.
Right, right. Before I leave you, where would you stand at a gig, and what would your primary sort of, what would you want to watch if you go to a gig?
Well, I prefer to sit when I can now. I'm not young, you know. I don't go anywhere near the mosh pit. No, I tend to stand at the back, pressed up against a wall with a non-alcoholic beer in my hand.
I see, I see. So I go there to watch the drummer, especially the snare and the hi hat. That's my main sort of kick. But that's me, and I do have a beer usually. And I definitely am not at the back of the wall because I need to see the drummer. But anyway,
Good for you.
that that probably doesn't matter to anybody who's watching this. But still, they have to come watch us for the next episode, which will come out shortly. I hope. So Tony, until then, this is Dr. KK signing off for Tony as well as the team that helps us bring such content to
See
you.
you
We
next
will
one.
see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.